The defense force are off the shore of an island, watching as a battle unfolds when one of the crew members asks the captain if it is really alright for them to not get involved or provide support for the people on the island. But the captain reminds him that they are nameless side characters, so the second they get too close to the action, they will be killed for plot development. It is best that they just leave the fighting up to the hunters on the island instead. And on that island, we see a man running through the brush of the forest while being chased by a monster of some sort, but this was all part of his plan as he was simply leading it to his party so they can jump it. However, as the team ready themselves to jump whatever comes out of that forest, they are met with an army of ants and now have to fight one-on-one battles. Unfortunately, these guys have never had a fight where they didn't gang up on their opponent, so now that they have to have fair fights, their lack of skill is apparent. The swordsman gets bodied by one ant, while the mage squad completely fails to do any damage with their flame spells. They came with intentions of jumping the ants but got their asses jumped instead, and the last one standing has lost the will to fight. The leader of the team is laid out on the ground, slowly bleeding to death, and has no one to blame except himself for losing the battle. But before he can lose consciousness and become ant food, the ant on top of him gets knocked off by a new hunter who clearly knows what he is doing. This skilled hunter wastes no time and immediately pops a revive on the whole squad to save him from dying, but in doing so he leaves his back wide open for the ants to attack. However, he didn't come here alone and has his team members save him with a lightning strike. Meanwhile, another one of his teammates, Yuho, is busy manhandling the ants with nothing but his fists, and the lightning wielder soon joins in as backup. These are some of the few S-ranked hunters, and the gap between these guys and the average schmuck is so vast that no one even comes close to their level of strength. Once the two have taken care of most of the ants, they tell the healer Byungdu that he went too far out ahead of them, which is too reckless to be doing in a situation like this. He apologizes, but he needed to rush out to save these people as soon as possible, and besides, he had faith in their ability to keep him safe while he healed them. Soon after, a giant white ant appears, although it doesn't look like this is the boss. It is most likely the leader of the monsters here. So he leaves the injured people in the care of Byungdu and tells Unsak to join him in battle to take down this monster. They both charge forward and ready their weapons for an attack. So as the ant attacks Yuho first, he holds it in place while Unsak comes in from above and hits it with a lightning strike. While the ant is stunned from the shock, Yuho takes the opportunity to rip off its mandibles, enraging the ant and causing it to kick him away. But he wasn't done yet, as he uses those same mandibles as projectiles and launches them straight through the abdomen of the ant, killing it in one blow. However, they are far from done, since several more of those ants emerge from the forest and Yuho is starting to get excited by the battle. He powers up and begins emanating purple energy, while Unsak does the same and releases a torrent of consecutive lightning strikes at the incoming horde. But while this is going on the other side of the city, there is another S-ranked hunter leading a team of side characters to stop the advancement of the ants. Once the average schmuck signals that everyone is ready, Choi unleashes a powerful fire blast that instantly roasts all the smaller ants, but the larger ones manage to make it through, so the cannon fodder must now engage in battle to hold them off. More than a decade ago, a portal that connects this world to many others opened, and various kinds of monsters and magical beasts began to invade. They soon realized that they were unable to do any damage with the weaponry they had, and they would have been at the mercy of the invaders if not for one thing. Humans began to awaken special abilities, and these people were called hunters. They are classified from a rank where we see all the really impressive hunters, all the way down to this loser in E rank. But once an ability is awakened, it can no longer be developed. 3 years have passed, and we see a construction site which has now become a dungeon raid site as a man grabs some breakfast before he heads in. One of his friends calls out to him as he eats, and he is surprised to see him there since he heard that Park quit being a hunter. That was true, but then he got backhanded by the economy after his wife got pregnant a second time, so he needs to earn a lot of money quick, and a dungeon raid would be perfect for it. They continue to catch up as we see the man himself, Jinwoo, the same loser that was at the bottom of the rankings. He greets everyone nervously as he enters, so Park asks why everyone seems to know who he is, wondering if he is some kind of really strong hunter, but it's actually the opposite. Jinwoo is regarded as the single weakest hunter that has ever existed. He even managed to get himself injured and hospitalized in an E-rank dungeon, so much so that they might as well create a new F-rank just for him. So with his widely known weak status, it has become somewhat of a good sign whenever he is called in a dungeon raid, since it means it is probably going to be a really easy one. Jinwoo heard every word they just said about him, but it's not like they are wrong, since he really is just that weak. He gets called out by a woman called Juhi, and it seems Jinwoo knows her from a previous mission they had gone on together, but greetings aside, she is more worried about his newest set of injuries and asks him what could have happened this time. They sit down and Jinwoo explains the embarrassing fact that he got injured in the lowest ranked of the dungeons and the team didn't have a healer on hand because they thought it would be way too easy for any self-respecting hunter to ever get themselves injured, but they hadn't accounted for him, Jinwoo's existence. Jui gets mad on his behalf, but Jinwoo already knows that it wasn't their fault, it was his own for being so weak in the first place. The time to enter the dungeon has arrived and they are all about to enter the dungeon, so this man, Song-chi, suggests that he be out in the position of party leader for this expedition. No one is opposed to the idea, so he leads them all in, and before Jinwoo enters, he gets a friendly reminder to stick as close to the group as possible in order to not get hurt again. Jinwoo's only weapon is a small knife with very little magic power, and this is all of his meager earnings are able to afford him in the way of equipment, but he swears he will do his best regardless. Elsewhere, the president of a company is having a talk with his assistant. The demands from the public are as contradictory as ever. They demand that he finds a way to stop the dungeon breaks, but also want the items that are acquired from the dungeons, though it is not like he is in a position to complain about their requests since he makes his money by selling the items gotten from the dungeon. The crystals harvested from the corpses of magic beasts can be sold for money, but the process of gathering them is really bloody. Luckily, Jinwoo has managed to get one on his own for the first time. However, in his celebration over the money he will get after he sells this gem, he leaves himself wide open and has to be brought back to reality by a call from Jui, warning him of an incoming attack. Jinwoo manages to raise his knife in time to defend himself from the goblin's strike, but his knife merely breaks in the process. He barely manages to dodge the goblin's follow-up strikes, but as he tries to defend with his knife again, the cheap thing shatters and he ends up getting himself stabbed in the stomach. Jui wants to go help him, but Park tells him to stay back while he handles it, and even though he hasn't gone on a mission in a long time, he has still got it in him as he slashes the goblin to death in one strike. Jinwoo pulls the sword out of his stomach, which is not something a doctor would recommend, and Park tells him to recover while he takes care of the next magical beasts in his place. He asks Jui to heal Jinwoo while they've got the time, so she heads over to him and begins the process. She puts her hand over the gushing wound and starts healing him as a light gathers around her hands and Jinwoo seems to be recovering slightly. On the other side of the cave, Jinwoo can see the rest of the hunters actually doing their jobs and he probably feels like shit both because of his injury and the injury to his pride after he promised himself that he would do well this time. We get a look at the top of the line equipment and magic gems being sold in this world, all things that Jinwoo will never be able to enjoy in his lifetime. Mana crystals harvested from the dungeons can be used as weapons as well, but their effectiveness is inferior to that of magic gems. However, President Go has received a new government mandate that wants to use the mana crystals as a new form of energy production since it is safer than nuclear energy, but still more efficient than any other form of renewable energy that exists in their world, so it is the ideal source of energy. Thus, the government is researching methods to generate electricity from the use of magic gems and mana crystals, making hunters even more crucial to society at large. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the party have just managed to take down a werewolf and are celebrating their victory over it, while Jinwoo is over in the corner getting healed up again, as he is the only one who managed to get seriously hurt. June was on his side earlier, but now after seeing how badly he keeps getting injured in fights, she is starting to question why he even became a hunter in the first place. If this keeps up, he's going to end up with injuries that are too severe for her to treat at some point. He apologizes, but Jui isn't interested in his apology. Instead, she wants him to be more careful with himself in the future. Jinwoo looks over to the rest of the hunters and they are busy splitting up the loot according to the work that was done in battle. And if we're talking about team contributions, then Jinwoo did basically nothing for the entire fight. So after this whole mission, all he has to show for it is a single E-rank magic gem and a broken dagger which he spent his life savings on. He is starting to reconsider coming out here and risking his life just to make no money, but then one guy on the team calls everyone's attention to a huge hole, and they all gather around to figure out what this thing is. It looks like a cave, but they are in a dungeon, so it is much more likely that happens to be a double dungeon. It's rare, but they've heard of it before, and their hunch is confirmed by the fact that they've already killed the dungeon boss, yet it hasn't started closing like a regular dungeon would. It seems like there will be more profit to be made deeper in the dungeon, but Song-chi tries to be the voice of reason and tells everyone that normal protocol is to inform the association of the double dungeon and follow the instructions that they give afterwards. The team doesn't want to do that since it would basically mean that they give up the rights to all the untapped loot that is probably waiting for them down there. Then Park says the words that never lead to anything good. It's just an F-rank dungeon. What's the worst that could happen? And then his wife and child get brought up and how he needs to make more money and get back to them. Yeah, I'm calling it now. He's not making it back from this one. Song-chi understands the point they are trying to make, but he wants to listen to everyone's opinions before he makes a decision on the matter. The team members all speak up with a mix of approval of the plan to venture deeper and realization that this is a clear death flag. In total, there are 6 votes for going into the cave and 6 votes for going home. So someone needs to break that tie, and the only one left who hasn't voted is Jinwoo. The decision is left up to him, and while he is well aware that a D-rank dungeon is insanely dangerous for him to be in, with his father missing, he is the only one in his family that can earn any money, and he's already got a ton of financial burdens. His mother is in the hospital, and his sister still has to go to college, so he can't stay broke forever. After he makes the decision to go into the dungeon, we cut away to a lab where people are getting tested for their magical powers. And outside in the waiting room, associations are waiting, ready to sign on any promising new hunters. And this rank hunter, Choi has told his people that regardless of age or gender, if there is a talented individual available to be recruited, then recruit them. Back in the dungeon, the party has been walking for 40 minutes now with no success in finding anything of value yet, and the portal to a dungeon closes after an hour since the dungeon boss was defeated. So that means they only have another 20 minutes before they run out of time altogether. Jinwoo apologizes to Juhee for making the decision to come down here when he knew she wanted to go back, but she isn't even mad about having to come down here. What she is mad about is that Jinwoo is still being such a reckless idiot with his body by deciding to come down into such a dangerous, unexplored dungeon, even though he was getting injured so badly earlier. That goblin stab could have been the end of him if she weren't around to heal him, and he realizes that now, so he gives it some serious thought. Juhee sees that Jinwoo is finally taking her safety concerns seriously, and that gets her to calm down a bit. But to make it up to her, she wants Jinwoo to get dinner with her after this, and Jinwoo gets flustered. But before he can give an answer, the party arrives at the boss room. They enter, and I'm sure you are all familiar with this room with the giant statues. They are at a loss for what they are supposed to do here, but find some writing on the walls. While it is being read by Song-chi, Juhee gets freaked out because she's pretty sure the eyes of the statue just moved. The doors to the room suddenly slam shut, and one member of the team who didn't want to come in the first place recognizes that something is wrong and tries to leave. But his exit is cut short as he is cut in half by one of the guard statues. Everyone starts freaking out because not only did someone just die, he was taken out in an instant with power that none of them can handle. Jinwoo looks back to the main statue, hoping that it doesn't move as well, but to his horror, it looks back at him. Jinwoo has lived through enough near-death experiences to know that this is one of them, so he yells for everyone to get down before it is too late. The giant statue unleashes a death ray that Jinwoo just barely managed to evade along with Juhee, but many others aren't so lucky and end up charred. Yet even if he got lucky this time, Jinwoo is sure that he will be killed sooner or later. This was the end of episode 1. We will cover the next episode as soon as it's out. Bodies are dropping left and right in a military base as a little boy is walking through all the chaos, but he couldn't care less about all the deaths he just caused, and instead he is just interested in finding a woman called Asaka who he has been looking for. A door opens and that same Asaka is seen being held at gunpoint by a woman who we haven't gotten the backstory for. Asaka is surprised to see Yogiri somehow managed to get into this base where she was held captive, but the one holding her hostage threatens to kill her if Yogiri takes another step closer. As she points the gun at Asaka's cheek, Yogiri just stares at her for a bit, and soon after, she drops dead. Asaka has no idea what Yogiri did, but once again, he cares very little for the life he just took, and is just happy to have his Asaka back. And now, Yogiri is being shaken awake by a different girl whom he doesn't recognize. She tells him that her name is Danura, and he asks what she's freaking out over, but she is more surprised that he was able to stay asleep through the huge incident that happened to them. There are bodies on the floor of the bus, and she's got no idea what they are going to do. Outside the bus, they notice a tail moving, so Yogiri throws a microphone at one of the appendages that had stabbed through one of his classmates, and it causes a wyvern that was outside the bus to writhe in pain. It gets up in a position that makes me question the nature of the appendage that was in that boy, and then it charges at the two of them in the bus. So Damnara is sure that they are going to die here since there is nothing they can do against a beast as powerful as that thing, but in the heat of the moment, she presses her melons against Yogiri, and that gets him to care just enough to say something and cause the dragon to drop dead before them. Damnara is confused and doesn't understand what just happened, so Yogiri pulls out a video game and tells her to calm down so they can talk. But she gets upset that he thinks now is a good time to be playing games. She asks if he doesn't want to leave the bus already, but he sees no reason to be in a rush since there is no guarantee that the outside will be safe for them to venture out into. She understands his point but asks that he put the game down and take the situation seriously for now. Yogiri obliges and asks to be informed of what happened that led them to the situation they find themselves in right now, so Damnara explains that they were riding the bus like they would any other field trip day, but as they went through a tunnel, they found themselves in a sunny meadow. At first, it was a pleasant yet confusing surprise, but then someone boarded the bus and introduced themselves as the sage Xian. She seemed nice enough at first glance, but as the teacher asks the reasonable question of what's going on, she boons his head off without hesitation. She tells everyone that she doesn't intend to harm anyone directly, but if they make her angry, they can fuck around and find out. She tries to make a joke, but it is so spectacularly unfunny that she freaking kills the driver for her own lack of a sense of humor. She explains to the rest of the students that she izakay'd them all here to become sages. This world is ruled by sages, but it is occasionally necessary to replenish the number of sages, which is why they were summoned here. She waves her hands and causes a majority of the students to begin glowing as she installs a system in their bodies called Battle Song. It comes with a status window, but Donora didn't get one, so she isn't sure what it looks like. Shin goes on to say that they have been given what this world calls gifts, so they are going to have to use those gifts well to become sages in the near future. Also, they only got 1 month to become sages, otherwise they die. Donora raises her hand and asks what happened because she didn't get one of those gifts, but Xian just says that there are times when people aren't suited to receive the magical gifts. So in other words, tough luck kid, you're screwed. Without a gift, she's doomed to become nothing more than livestock in this world. So with that out of the way, she tells them all that their first quest will be starting soon where a dragon will be attacking them, so they should try their best not to die. Donora's friend is looking over her menu screen and sees information about the dragon that will be attacking soon, but Donora still can't believe an actual dragon is going to attack. One member of their class gets the attention of the others and asks that they all work together so they can clear the mission, and to do that, they are going to need to know what they are working with, so he asks that they all reveal the gifts that they were given. The class comply with his requests and write down their abilities to formulate a plan, but Donora, who doesn't have an ability, can't participate. However, she wasn't the only one who didn't get an ability since there were 3 others who had the same thing happen to them. Ayaka Shinozaki and Yuichiro Kiryu. And then there's also Yogiri, who managed to sleep through the entire commotion undisturbed. But then again, it's not like he ever did anything other than sleep in the first place. A while later, the rest of the gifted classmates who were sharing their ability lists begin to leave without saying a word to any of the people in the back who didn't receive one. So Donora tries to wake Yogiri up so they can follow the rest of the class as they exit the bus, but the one who led them the gifted class stops Kiryu. He tells him that he didn't receive a gift, and while those who did have gained some kind of special ability that allows them to do things like rip a chair out of the ground with ease, the rest of the class are just regular people who are still failing P class. Shinozaki asks the gifted class to protect the ones without gifts since they have the power to do so, but the guy thinks it would only become a burden for the class if they had to protect people who were so weak the entire time they were trying to become sages. Thus, they came up with an ingenious plan. They are gonna ditch them all here and use them as bait. Everyone in the class agreed to do this to them, so there's no one to appeal to for help. Another one of their classmates uses her ability to cast charm on the giftless classmates, making them all look far more attractive than they were before, but unfortunately, they're going to match with that dragon and it's not going to be a pleasant experience for them. The rest of the class leaves them to their fate and they have no idea what they are going to do, but things only get worse for them as the dragon arrived and began the slaughter. And that leads us to where we are now, though someone was peacefully sleeping in the back of the bus while his classmates were getting slaughtered. Yogiri now understands the gravity of his situation. He is in another world, so how is he supposed to charge his video game without any outlets available? Aside from that, if what they learned from the gifted class is to be believed, then there is likely only one dragon in the area, so it should be safe for them to head outside now since it is already dead. Before they go, Donora asks Yogiri if he did something to the dragon earlier, but he just says he told it to die and it died. She doesn't believe him, but that's what he did, so he just steps out of the bus. There are 3 options for places they can go to after this: a hill, the city, or the forest, but it's probably a good idea not to go into an unknown forest unprepared. Before a decision can be made, Donora notices something flying towards them. Yogiri asks if it is another dragon, but this time it is 3 of their classmates, Higashida, Fukuhara, and Hanakawa. She's surprised to see them flying in, so Yogiri asks if he should kill them, just in case. Donora stops him since they should at least hear them out before they murder anyone, but Yogiri points out that leaving the giftless behind to be killed isn't something a good person would do. Donora still doesn't want to have to kill anyone, but even if she doesn't hold a grudge against them, they may still be hostile towards them for no reason. The 3 gifted students are shocked to see that the dragon is dead, and moreover, Donora is still alive. Their plan was to use their powers to turn her body into a zombie and, well, do monetizable things to her. And they say all of this right in earshot of Donora herself, so she realizes Yogiri may have been right about them not being good people, and is suddenly much less opposed to killing them. Higashida launches a fireball which is powerful enough to melt straight through the bus and carve into a mountain behind them, all to show the power difference between them and force Danura into giving up and becoming their plaything. Higashida says that he decided in this world that he would do anything he wants, and the first thing on that list is to screw Danura along with the other two guys who say they've been dreaming about this for a long time. Danura is freaked out by the thought of what they would do to her, but Yogiri tells her to calm down while he puts them in a situation where they can have a civil discussion. He then points at Higashida and tells him to die. The others laugh thinking Yogiri is just being cringy, but to their utter shock, he actually does fall to the ground and die. They don't understand what happened, but Yogiri told him to die and he did. Nothing much to explain there. He tells them not to move, but the other one drops to his knees to help his friend, and as a result, Yogiri tells him to die as well. Hanakawa is now the only one left, and Yogiri reiterates that if he moves at all, you'll be killed. Yogiri now begins to explain his ability, but first he instructs Hanakawa to check to make sure those guys are actually dead, so he goes to them and starts trying to heal them. His healing ability allows him to help anyone recover from injuries, no matter how grave they are, but his powers do nothing here because the people he's trying to heal are already dead. Hanakawa starts saying Yogiri went too far with this, but they were the ones who came in here trying to kidnap Danura for loot purposes. Yogiri's ability is instant death to any target, so if he simply thinks about wanting to kill someone, they will immediately die without exception. Hanakawa can't believe what he is hearing since that power is way too broken, but he tries to play it off and get in close for a sneak attack. However, Yogiri stops him before he can do anything stupid and informs him that he also has the ability to determine if there is anything killing intent directed towards him. So when you combine the two abilities, literally anyone who has the intent of killing Yogiri may die just because they thought about harming him. Hanakawa breaks down, realizing that there is no way he can win against Yogiri, but Yogiri asks why he got so full of himself after having just received his gift, so Hanakawa explains that this isn't the first time that they have come to this world. A while ago, the magicians of the Kingdom of Iman summoned them to defeat the Demon Lord, but the gist of it is that they went on adventures in this world for about a year, and once they finally defeated the Demon Lord, they were returned to Earth. Velvet can't seem to remember those three ever disappearing for an entire year. According to Hanakawa, after they were returned to Earth, they found out that only a few hours has passed since they were initially summoned, so Yogiri takes that to mean that there is a way for them to return to Earth. He raised his hand to finish off Hanakawa to prevent any future issues with him, but he begs to be spared by Yogiri. He tries to get Demura to help him out here, but after what he said when he initially came here, she is the last person who would ever want to do him a favor. As a last resort, Hanako pulls out a rare slave collar item which will make the wearer unable to disobey the commands of the first person they see. He puts the collar on and is now bound to the will of Danura, but she doesn't want to have to deal with him, so she offloads the task of being his master onto Yogiri. Since Hanakawa can't disobey his orders now, Yogiri decides to leave him alive for a while, but he tells him to go stand in the forest full of magical beasts and wait. He also tells him to leave behind any valuable items that he has, so Hanakawa is forced to drop his entire inventory worth of loot from his last summoning. Danura asks if he may be being a little too harsh in taking all of his stuff away and making him wait in a deadly forest, but they aren't exactly friends and there is no telling when he might betray them in the end. Danura then asks why he is sticking with her since she could also betray him at some point, but if it happens then it happens, he is fine with it since he is the one who chose to trust her. Danura blushes a little and asks why he is going through such lengths to protect her even though they have basically never spoken to each other before, but he doesn't really know. If you had to think of a reason, then it would probably be because of her melons though. She gets red in the face from embarrassment and yells about him only wanting her for her body as well, but elsewhere, Shion is in bed and very pleased with herself when someone called Yuchi comes in to give her a report on the students she summoned. They'd have cleared the first mission, but there were 4 fatalities in the process. Shion assumes the fatalities were from the students who weren't able to receive gifts, but while 2 of them did die, there were also 2 ranked gift holders that died in the process. That's a big surprise, especially since they died without any warning, but Shion doesn't think it is anything that they really need to be worried about, so she tells Yuichi that he can handle it any way he sees fit. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next part.